What's the difference between counterphobic 6 and type 8 on the Enneagram? This is a very common dilemma. In fact, I would say that many people are actually mistyped as 8 and only discover months, if not sometimes years later, they have their aha moment and realize, oh my gosh, I'm actually a counterphobic 6. The outward behavior of both has common area, which is why there's so much mistyping, but the reasons for the behavior are very different. Let's do a deep dive into the very important differences between counterphobic 6 and type 8. First, my little disclaimer moment. The Enneagram is not a box that we put people into. In fact, I believe that the Enneagram gives us the opportunity to discover the box we're already in. And if we use this knowledge, we can carve our way out. Your personality is in you. You are not in it. In other words, you are always more than your personality. Think of your personality as an operating system. Think of it as a song rising inside of you. You are always more than your operating system. You are always more than these songs that sing themselves in your being. The method I find the most helpful to tell one Enneagram type apart from another is a 2-step process that I call common ground, different route. So on the surface of two personality types, we can see the common ground of common behavior. In other words, when people are doing the same thing, they're both labeling their Tupperware, or they're both perfectionists, or they're both very assertive and direct. But then when we trace the behavior deeper than the surface of the ground level to the root, we find that there is a different reason for the behavior. And I look at two things when looking at the difference in the root. I look at what we call the 3 personality poles, which is the grain of sand in the center of the pole, which is the reason for the behavior, and the primary polarity, which is the push-pull dynamic that sits inside of the personality. Together, these are the most powerful drivers that sit at the root of the behavior. So we could say, first we look at what is the common ground of behavior. What can we see outwardly that is confusing us, making us think, gosh, which type is it? Because both do the same things. And then we must trace those common grounds to look for, yes, but why are they doing something? What is the different reason driving the behavior? So let's look at the common ground and then the different roots of counterphobic 6 and type 8 on the Enneagram. Some of the common ground between these two types is the outward assertiveness, the directness of the personality, the tendency to just say things as they are and shoot from the hip, and almost like it's either what would be called an insensitivity or a disregard for diplomacy. So very much as you see, that's what you get. So assertiveness, directness, even to the point of being blunt. Now, we are using words that some people might find quite extreme. In order to find our personality types, we do need to zone in on some of that middle ground expression. I always suggest we do this with compassion for the personality, understanding, and we take it with a pinch of salt. In fact, learning to not take the personality personally is one of the gifts of the Enneagram. Both your type 8 and your counterphobic 6 can appear to be quite fearless, really willing to just say it like it is. And both can also appear to be impatient, wanting to take that direct road, to not do the fluff, not do the 25 slide PowerPoint presentation, really just to get straight to the point, get straight to it. Another area of common ground is the identification with gut, instinct, and anger. Now, typically, those words are assigned more to type 8 on the Enneagram. But here's the thing about the word gut. People often associate gut with intuition and with good instincts. Now, all 9 types can actually relate to enjoying their gut instincts. In fact, if you ask all 9 types who has a lovely, strong sense of intuition or who gets gut instincts, they're likely to all, or at least most people, will put up their hand. It's helpful to realize that what we mean by gut for types 8, 9, and 1, which I call the red pearls, the red personality pearls, is actually more of a knee-jerk, physically felt body instinct. Now, we all share gut instinct, just like we all share the center of intelligence from the heart and the mind. So the mind's center of intelligence is the center of gravity or the strongest driver for the blue pearls, 5, 6, and 7. The heart is the strongest driver for the green pearls, type 2, 3, and 4. And the gut is the strongest driver for the red pearls, which is type 8, 9, and 1. But the strongest driver, what red pearl means, is actually like a physically felt pre-verbal gut instinct that isn't accompanied by a lot of mind noise or emotional need from the heart. Our counterphobic 6 uses their intuition, which they might call gut intuition, but they're scanning from a blue pearl perspective. So here's where we're starting to trace the differences between the gut identification of the 8 versus the gut instinct identification of the counterphobic 6. Our counterphobic 6 often is scanning for, can I trust you? And there does tend to be quite a bit of mind noise, thought, and decision making and analysis and weighing things up and checking from the mind. Whereas our red pearl, our gut instinct 8 on the Enneagram, it is very felt. It's very known. There's like a knowing, a felt somatic of the body sensing that doesn't come with essays of thought. Anger as it shows up for our type 8 versus anger as it shows up for our counterphobic 6. Both tend to identify with anger. But what is different, the different root, is that for our type 8, anger is wired into the personality from day one. In fact, our type 8s, often when they are younger, look around and realize, my gosh, I seem to be carrying a lot of this fiery energy, this commander-in-chief type of presence of anger. And because it is a red pearl anger, which is physically felt gut anger, there doesn't always have to be a cause for the anger, a reason for the anger, or a point of direction for the anger to be aimed at, because it's part of the DNA of this personality type. Whereas with our counterphobic 6, the anger is usually directed towards something, and it's not so much part of the personality. It's not wired into our counterphobic 6. Our counterphobic 6 tends to feel angry towards injustice, fighting for the underdog, speaking for the powerless, directed towards authorities, abuse of power, bully dynamics. So the anger is to something for the counterphobic 6, instead of part of the DNA, part of the personality itself. So both our 8 on the Enneagram and counterphobic can have strong opinions. that are spoken and shared in a very direct, assertive way. But when we trace into the red pill versus blue pill reason for behavior, the difference in the root, we find that our 8 on the Enneagram does not feel the need to justify. There's not a blue pill mind, essay writing, justification, reasoning, thinking through the thing to give a whole lot of backstory, motivation, validating thought process behind the opinions and the position. So our 8 tends to be, this is how I feel, and there doesn't tend to be a lot of justification. That's not to say that there isn't 1 or 2 bullet points that are not based on fact or researched. We're not talking about that. But your 8 tends to be very brief, to the point, this is how I feel, accept it or leave it. And you're not going to tend to get long reasonings, like long essays or emails or big comments or a lot of pondering after a conversation. Whereas your counterphobic 6 is going to have that outward display of assertiveness, directness, but they hold on to the topic. They hold on with the mind because this is a blue pill. And you find that the blue pill is going to go round and round to motivate, justify, and also do potentially something that our phobic 6 and counterphobic 6 engage in, which is find troops, find support, look for allies, look for strengthening the position, the justification in the herd, in the pack, in the tribe. To really understand the difference between type 8 and counterphobic 6, it can help to understand the difference between counterphobic 6 and phobic 6. Here is a quick metaphor for understanding 6 and how 6 becomes counterphobic, in my opinion. Our 6s, who are blue pills, which are mind types searching for security through the center of gravity being dominantly driven by thought, mind, dividing things between left, right, labeling, which is a function of the mind, separating out, categorizing, seeking patterns in order to feel secure. Because without that, our blue pills tend to feel some degree of anxiety, anything from a jittery nervousness and caution all the way to really paralyzing fear. And these are the big drivers for our blue pill. And our 6 has been looking for support, driven by this blue pill grain of sand. So the metaphor is, imagine a 6 is looking for a chair to sit in that they can trust. So they're sitting on a chair, and what our 6 metaphorically is doing is bouncing on the chair to check if they're safe. Can I trust this chair? Can I trust this chair? And our 6s tend to smile and go, yes, I'm sort of poking the bear. I'm checking the relationships. Can I trust you? Because underneath there is the scanning for, can I trust you? Do you have my back? Are you a trustworthy support system in my life? Do you have my back? Quite literally. Now, our phobic 6 still believes that there are chairs that are trustworthy, still believes there are people and relationships and that life has their back. They just need to test the chair and check if it's all right. Our counterphobic 6 has tended to have experiences where too many chairs have broken. And now they're tired of being let down. They're tired of being unsupported. And so there's this energy of, I'm not going to stay in the flight anymore of the response to that. I'm going into the fight response. It's still fear underneath, but it's fear driving a more aggressive expression. Instead of being the doormat now, I'm going to be the doormat stomper, so to speak. And I'm going to bounce on the chair breaks again. Now I kick the chair and I say, I don't need chairs. I'm fine on my own. And there is that assertive, aggressive tone, but it's coming from a place of being tired, of being frightened. And it's a movement against fear. So our counterphobic 6 is actually appearing to be angry, assertive, but the root is still mind, it's still fear, and it's this disappointment of, I can't trust. I'm on my own. Now I move from flight, phobic 6, to fight, counterphobic 6. Now our type 8 on the Enneagram identifies quite strongly with the default setting of a push-pull towards strength versus weakness, but they don't feel like they're trying to become strong or really striving for or using strength. They feel strong within themselves. You can almost imagine the sense of physical presence. Our type 8s, even when they're young, tend to walk into a room with a sense of authority and strength, and power and control are big parts of that personality expression. Your counterphobic 6, on the other hand, might relate to the words like strength versus weak, but it's rooted more in the I'd rather fight than flee. It's still got its root in fear. And our counterphobic 6 is still, when they look deeply in their behavior, is still being driven by a fear dynamic, so that the fear is driving anger or strength. Our counterphobic 6 is often really strongly connected to or seems to relate to concepts of power versus powerlessness, bully versus victim. And our phobic 6 and our counterphobic 6 tends to identify with the powerless, the underdog, the servant, the segments of society that don't have a voice, and often are rallying towards the cause of speaking for those without a voice. Now, the counterphobic is going to take that one step further, where the championing of the cause is more aggressive, more assertive, and outwardly could look like type 8. But the reason, of course, is because it's a fight for justice. And this is a strong theme, usually, for our counterphobic 6. We compare that to our 8, and I know this can be a little confusing because there are a few overlaps, but our type 8 is more centered around what I believe for me, and they identify more with the powerful than the powerless. Now, that's not to say that they won't take out their metaphorical sword to protect a loved one, a friend, a family member, when they feel moved to, but they don't identify with, I am speaking for the powerless. And there's not a strong rallying to cause. And it's not to say that an 8 can't be charitable or have causes that mean something to them. Of course not. One of the very simplified examples I give, and please remember when I give examples, they're for the purpose of teaching and highlighting. We don't want to generalize here. They're meant to convey an idea or a principle. So if you have a type 8 in a restaurant and a counterphobic 6 in a restaurant, and they see a authority figure, let's say the owner of the restaurant, fighting with a waiter, and you tell them you cannot get any of the story, because if you ask both to pick a side, it's just common decency for both of them to say, well, I don't know the story, so it's hard to pick a side. Who will you tend to side with is my question. And if we just, with this thought experiment, we set the rules that you can't know the story, and you just have to push a button. You have to push a button that says, I will probably side with the manager, or I probably will side with the waiter. Now, remember, I'm generalizing, okay? But what you'll find is because of the Counterphobic Sixes program, they will lean towards the waiter because of the program of powerless versus power and identifying with the powerless. Our phobic and counterphobic sixes have natural compassion wired into them from the beginning for those without power, those without authority. So if pushed, there's a leaning towards the waiter. Whereas our 8, because the way they're wired, and neither can help it. Remember, these programs are wired into us. What we can do is learn to use them with wisdom. We can learn to grow in our personality types. But the default setting, so to speak, our 8 is wired almost for Sergeant Major on the battlefield. And on the battlefield, you don't have time to send kissy, kissy, kissy on SMSs, right? You don't have, it is strategic, and leadership and command and power can get people through a war. So the 8 tends to lean towards identifying with the leader, with the commander-in-chief that is powerful. Our counterphobic 6 struggles sometimes with leadership because leadership separates you from the pack. And our counterphobic 6 wants to be equal to the pack, whereas our 8s tend to struggle merging with the pack because they're wired for, I must be in charge, someone has to take the decisions, someone has to captain the ship. Our counterphobic 6 demands transparency. In other words, open declaration, like everything must be upfront and open, and that is a way to feel secure. It's a way for our counterphobic 6 to feel like they've got all the information, because information helps our counterphobic, that's a blue pill, to feel secure. Our red pill, 8 on the Enneagram, demands or wants respect. And there isn't that need for transparency. In fact, give me the information that I need, and I don't need all the rest. Give me the 3-point bullet point summary. I don't want to hear all of the data. I don't need the information to be secure, says the 8, whereas I do need the information, says the counterphobic 6. The growth paths of the counterphobic 6 are different to the growth paths of a type 8. And this is another way we can learn to really tell the two apart. Our counterphobic 6 is connected to 2 other types on the Enneagram, type 3 and type 9. I find it helpful to imagine this as an electrical circuit board of sorts, where you imagine there are doorways between the types. At a low function, only one doorway is open. At a high expression, when the type has grown in personal growth, in emotional growth, spiritual growth, and they've stepped more into their wholeness, that personality tends to have both doors open and is able to access the best of the other 2 types on the Enneagram. We never change our types, but the type is almost upgraded, like software that can reach its full potential because it has access to 2 other types that balance some of the destructive or some of the less helpful personality expressions. So your counterphobic has 2 doorways to 3 and 9, whereas your type 8 on the Enneagram has doorways to type 2 and 5. The counterphobic 6, as well as the phobic 6, are learning to open a door to healthy, whole type 9 qualities. Because a low functioning 6 feels denied, blocked, they have that door closed to type 9, the best of 9. So what you'll find instead is that our low functioning 6 can only access 3. And because it's not balanced by 9, it's the lower expression of 3. On the ladder of growth, a low functioning type 6, both phobic and counterphobic, lack type 9's balancing qualities and only have some of the low functioning 3. And what that looks like is our 6 lacks 9's being able to go with the flow, being able to let things go, their peacefulness of being grounded in the present moment. Instead, our 6s feel frazzled and they can't let things go. They tend to hold on with the mind to going round and round and round and round. So the mind is like that little mouse running on the wheel, or that hamster running on the wheel. And therefore, the stress levels and the anxiety levels go up. I've heard clients refer to their ability, their learning to open the door to 9. Now I can breathe and feel comfortable in my own skin. That's when a 6 opens the door to 9. How the 3 shows up in this dynamic, let's say a lower functioning 3 expression can be a fake it till you make it, and a chameleon-like adaptability where our 6s, in order to fit in, feel secure, can put on a mask, a 3 mask of courage and strength that doesn't feel real, become a lot more competitive than they are in their own nature, lose some of the gift of their own humility, and blend in with the group that they're in order to feel secure. When our counterphobic and phobic 6 opens a door to 9, that is balancing that 3, and now our high expression 6 has access to both. Both doors are open. They have the motivation, the drive of 3. They can get into action and be competitive in a healthy way, in an authentic 6 way, as well as learn to let things go with the flow, and be peaceful and comfortable in their own skin. Now you compare that path to an 8's path. An 8 at the low level of expression has a door closed to 2, which means they lack all of the healthy 2 energies and qualities, which includes compassion, generosity, and putting other people first, selflessness of the heart. And what you'll find is our 8, who cannot access 2, but can only access 5, there is this isolating from people and co-opting or using the 5's mind analysis, as well as accessing some of the anxiety of the 5, but it's in an 8 way. So it's a slamming of the door, leave me alone, and then I'm going to stew in my thinking, and I'm going to go around something again and again, but from this gut angry place, and I'm going to isolate from people and feel some anxiety about not being in control. So that's how our 8 is accessing only 5 at the low expression. When our 8 learns to open a door to 2, they almost move from that mafia energy of the low expression to the high expression of samurai with a heart. So this is still the energy of 8. 8s stay 8s, 6s stay 6s, but it's a higher expression because our 8 has now learned compassion, generosity, and really the kindness of the heart, which for an 8 is really a challenge because 8s are wired for battle. They're wired with almost like a military app inside of the personality. So when our 8 learns to open to 2, you have the I always say it's like the innkeeper image, a generous warrior, and you have someone who's still very in the gut, very physical, very, it's about drink with me, eat with me, dine with me, and there's this generosity of spirit. So our 8 balances 2 and 5. So there's this strategic mind, 5, with generosity of the heart and compassion anchored into an 8 working at their highest expression, whole and complete. So when comparing counterphobic 6 versus 8, one of the key differences there is our 6s already have the compassion. It's not a difficult thing to feel compassion, whereas our 8s have grown into compassion. Our 8s can let things go when it's like, well, that's not working, drop it, move on. Whereas our counterphobic and our phobic struggles to let go. All of our personalities are on a journey to wholeness. Every single one of our personalities has a default setting that is challenging. So learning about the Enneagram can invite a deep sense of compassion and understanding for each other. It's my opinion that you can't solve a personality. You can only understand it. Remembering, of course, that we are always more than our personalities. Our personalities are in us. We're not in them. And so when we see that, we can, with compassion, love, and wisdom, help our personalities to rise to their wholeness and their highest expression.